I'd like to thank the organizers for asking me to speak in this workshop. I was just admiring Claire lectured on complicated stuff just like that without any notes. She's able to do it. I'm afraid if I tried that, it'll be a total disaster. I'm going to refer to my notes frequently. Please bear with me. Okay. So if X, I'm talking on reporting on some joint work with Andreas Rosenschon. So if X is a smooth quasi-projective variety for a field K, I can associate to it its motivic cohomology. So these, I'm going to write them like this. So these two parameters, the M, the index of the cohomology, and the twist. Let me remind you how this is defined. There are several definitions. The definition convenient for me is the following. I define HM motivic xzn equals the mth Zariski hypercohomology of a certain complex So what does this notation mean? This n is the n there. It's a complex of sheaves. So a sheaf is something which if you have an open set U, you get a group. So that's the dash. And this thing is the place in the complex. So what are these complexes of sheaves? Zn is a complex of sheaves associated to pre-sheaves as follows. So if I have an open set U, you take in the rth spot, so to speak, something which I'll write Zn UR, and then that goes to Zn U R minus 1, and so on, goes all the way to Zn U0 to 0. So what is this Zn UR in turn? This is something inside the cycles of codimension n on U cross affine R space. So the idea is that I think of affine R space as spec, I mean if I want to work generally I can say spec Z x naught xr by summation xi minus 1. So I think of this as some kind of algebraic simplex. So it comes with a natural combinatorial structure associated to simplices like faces and so on. So if I take U cross affine space, inside it I have U cross lower dimensional affine spaces, which I think of as faces of some kind, and I can look at codimension n cycles, each of whose components meet all faces properly. So this is the subgroup of cycles meeting all faces properly. Properly is in the usual sense in cycle theory, meaning the dimension of the intersection is correct. You allow tangencies, you allow multiplicities and so on, but the dimension is right. Okay, if you take cycles of this special kind, which happen to meet faces of all dimensions properly, then if I intersect with one of the faces, one of the top dimensional faces, I get a cycle in U cross affine R minus 1 space, which again meets all the faces properly. So there are well-defined face maps, and it makes sense to talk about some sort of boundary homomorphism, the alternating sum of the face maps. And this produces a differential, you get a complex. This is the so-called block complex of higher Chow cycles. Then what I want to do is I want to think of this for each U, and if I have a V contained in U and I have a cycle at the U level and intersected with V, it still meets faces properly. So I need get pre-sheaves, sheafify, take Zariski hypercohomology. That's the definition. That's an abstract definition. Bloch proved that in fact, if I just take the complex Zn x dot and take its cohomology, you get what are called higher Chow groups. So you have so-called Chow n x 2n minus m equals, you find it's a theorem of Bloch that if you take the cohomology of the complex which I get just by substituting x here, so it's an ordinary chain complex of abelian groups, indexed suitably, you have to shift things around, which is why in the formula there's some shift here. Then the groups you get that way, called the higher Chow groups, are in fact the are a special case of these groups. So H2n, sorry, in general, let me get the indices right. This is H and motivic x Zn. So indeed, what I'm saying is that though I gave you a definition with Zariski hypercohomology, there's a definition which doesn't use any hyper anything. Just write down a chain complex and compute the homology. But there are some technical reasons why it's good to do this for the theory. And in particular, if we want to, once you have a formula like this, you can say, instead of Zar, I can put something else, and maybe I get something interesting. I believe Steve Lichtenbaum is one of the first people who sort of looked at that seriously. And so you can define Étale motivic cohomology or Lichtenbaum cohomology in exactly the same way, but just put et instead of Zar. So you get these other groups. And whatever they are, there's some obvious functoriality property you would expect that the usual motivic cohomologies map to these other ones. An obvious map. This is an obvious property. And this is an iso tensored with Q. Or I can think of it instead as working with Q coefficients. So these are two obvious properties. And of course, what I can do with Z, I can work with any other abelian group as my coefficient and do that. These higher Chow groups, I should perhaps remind the people who don't know, who haven't perhaps seen this. The ordinary Chow groups, Chow n x, are the same as Chow n x comma 0, which are particular cases of these motivic cohomologies H2n x Zn. So whatever these higher groups are, they generalize the standard Chow groups. So in particular, these things with the L also generalize standard Chow groups. They give you some generalization. So I can call them Lichtenbaum Chow groups of some kind. So in particular, I have maps from the usual Chow groups to these other groups, and this is an iso tensor Q. And one might ask, are these interesting in their own right? What can we do with them? I believe Steve looked at them for reasons to do with values of zeta functions and number theory and so on. I think in geometry, I was, for example, vaguely aware that there was such a thing, but I didn't realize it has anything to do with complex geometry. So the theme of our work is that if X over C is smooth and projective, yeah? Possibly. I'm going to work with the complex numbers, so certainly it's perfect. Maybe Geiser can comment on this if he's here. No conditions are required, right? Yeah. The characteristic P experts assure me that there's no condition. Right, so I've got this stuff. Now, here's something where I've taken a group which I understand well and given a different integral structure to the corresponding rational vector space. So you can ask, if I look at the Chow groups themselves, there are various properties which I can think of from the integral perspective as being some pathology, some bad properties which I don't like. And then I can ask, are these better? That's the question we asked ourselves in this investigation. So let me just remind you what are some of these bad properties integrally for the Chow groups. Some, well, bad, whatever, pathological, depends on your point of view, properties of the usual Chow groups. For example, there exists X over C smooth projective of any dimension such that if I look at Chow Ix tensor Z mod Lz, this is infinite for all primes L, for all 2 less than or equal to I less than dimension X. So if you leave out divisors and 0 cycles, in every other degree the Chow group tensor Z mod L is infinite for all primes L. You can find such examples. Until a little while ago, Andreas and I had in fact proved that for all but finitely many primes this happens, and Bert Totaro just last month gave a lecture where he announced that he can in fact do it for all primes, including the prime 2, which is very interesting for quadratic form reasons. So there are such examples, and there exists X over C smooth projective of any dimension such that for all 3 less than or equal to I less than dimension X, if I look at the L torsion in the ith Chow group, this is an infinite group. I don't mean L primary torsion, I mean L torsion is infinite for all primes L. And again, until recently it was all but finally many, but thanks to Bert, this is all primes. So I think we would think of this as somewhat pathological properties. And as we've seen already in several lectures, the Hodge conjecture in codimension I, where let's say 2 less than or equal to I less than dimension X, is false unless the tensor with Q in general. There are examples where in every degree there's a Hodge class which is not algebraic, but only some multiple is algebraic. So this is failure of the integral Hodge conjecture. We saw lots of things, and then many other things of that type. Another bad property which is somehow related to these two, torsion in Chow I does not specialize injectively. This is I 2 less than I less than dimension X. In codimension 2, because you have very good control on the torsion thanks to Mercury of Suslin, it does specialize injectively because you can reduce it to cohomology. 0 cycles and divisors of course are classical. Every other case it's wrong. The rough families over C, nice smooth projective families, and the torsion does not specialize injectively. Okay, so these I think are various weird properties. So our perspective is that somehow if we replace the Chow groups with this stuff, much of this goes away. Price you have to pay, of course, look at the definition. It's not exactly elementary. All right. So let me also, just to put the things in perspective properly, I'm interested ultimately in complex varieties, so I want to look at Deligne Beilinson cohomology, which is what I want to use for my trying to understand things like torsion. So I want to compare cycles with that. Let me just remind you what that is. There's this complex which I want to write like this, because it makes sense for every x, the Deligne complex. And one has, this is the following explicit chain complex, but one should be maybe a little careful that here really I have to take it analytically. This is a complex of analytic sheaves, and one has the Deligne cohomology, or Deligne Beilinson cohomology. This is just the nth hypercohomology of this complex. Let me just remind you that if you took the particular one where the indices somehow match up with the indices for usual Chow groups, which is 2n n, then there's an exact sequence suppose I should put X analytic here, properly speaking. Inside the Betti cohomology, I have the Hodge cycles in codimension n, and here I have the intermediate Jacobian, and this Deligne cohomology is something which fits into such an exact sequence. So this is the intermediate Jacobian. And remember, we have a cycle map from Chow n x to the Hodge cycles. The Hodge conjecture says that it's surjective tensor Q. Part of the business of Deligne cohomology is to construct a lifting, which is the cycle map with values in Deligne cohomology. So since the diagram commutes, if I look at the group which appeared also in Claire-Stock, the cycles in the kernel of the topological cycle map, Chow and Hom x, this has an induced map here, and this is just the Abel-Jacobi map of Griffiths. X is projective smooth. Yeah, so. And in fact, essentially in my talk, X is going to be projective and smooth, but the proofs will require other X's, which is why Deligne Beilinson cohomology has to come in because one wants. So here, notice that it's hypercohomology or something, but this is in the analytic topology. So Spencer-Bloch generalized this picture here to construct maps. So Bloch constructed what you might think of them as generalized cycle maps. Where if this index here is 2n, it's just that map there. So these are sort of higher things. I can think of these as also as cycle maps of some kind. And these, if m is strictly less than 2n, if you're in this range, so that you're in the range where you're not dealing with ordinary cycles but genuinely higher cycles, then from this you can go to what you might think of as hm x rn. Really in the same sort of thing, where instead of the integers I put the real numbers. This is a real vector space. This map here is more or less the regulator. So the higher Chow groups or motivic cohomologies are supposed to be related to algebraic K theory, graded pieces of algebraic K theory for the gamma filtration and the like. And regulators can be viewed either as sort of just coming from what you might think of as cycle maps with this theory, or as something cooked up by Chern classes or whatever using the other perspective. So this was Bloch's motivation. He wanted an integral version of the regulator maps, and this is something which you can do. Okay, so what Bloch did is he constructed this by setting up a general machine for trying to construct cycle maps from this theory with values in something. So Bloch had a general machine that he said if you have some suitable cohomology theory of varieties which takes this form, let me put it like this. Suppose I have some complexes of sheaves in the Zariski topology which depend functorially on the space X, and I have also a notion of twist, so I have complex of sheaves together with these twists, so I have several of them. Then I can try to set up some kind of cohomology theory of varieties, and I can look at cohomology theories, so X associated to it to have these cohomologies. You can ask that these satisfy certain natural axioms. For example, things like you have a theory which cohomology which supports cycle classes, homotopy, invariance, various axioms Spencer Bloch wrote down, natural ones which are satisfied in many cases. And then what he was able to show is that if you have such a theory, so with certain natural axioms, this is Bloch again, implies that there exists cycle maps. In this case, it will be Bloch in this thing. It's nothing. No, Bloch-August may come somewhere in the discussion. No, this particular thing is Bloch. Cycle map of this form, H whatever this cohomology theory is, it will receive maps from these higher Chow groups, and part of the axioms would be that somehow usual cycles, ordinary cycles, already must have cycle classes in the theory. So somehow the game is, whatever higher Chow groups are or higher Chow cycles are, in principle I can think of them as coming from ordinary cycles somewhere else. On those other varieties, I must have ordinary cycle class maps and therefore be able to write something down which supports and so on, some homological algebra, and you do all that, and then finally you land up with these maps. That's what Bloch's work involved. So our first result is that if you have such a theory, is a, let me call it a Bloch cohomology theory, I think I understand what Ananta was getting at. Of course, you have Bloch-August theories, which also some theories satisfying some axioms. I think the axioms are a little weaker for this. You need a little less for this stuff. Bloch-August requires stronger axioms. So if you have a Bloch cohomology theory, whatever is in Spencer Bloch's paper, those axioms, which satisfies étale descent then there exists a commutative diagram as follows. I have HM Motivec XZN maps to HM étale Motivec or Lichtenbaum XZN, and then maps to the corresponding Bloch cohomology group, whatever it is in this theory. This map was constructed by Bloch. So what we are asserting is that there's a map like this giving a commutative diagram. This is the reasonable statement you might expect. And you have one slight extra hypothesis, which Bloch didn't need, is that the particular cohomology theory which you set up must also satisfy étale descent. So maybe I should briefly remind you what étale descent means. It means that if you have x dot to x, étale hypercover implies that the cohomology of this simplicial object is naturally identified with the cohomology of the base space. That's what satisfying étale descent means this. For example, Betti cohomology does satisfy it. And because Betti cohomology satisfies it, Deligne-Beilinson cohomology also satisfies it. What is less obvious, perhaps, is that if you take Deligne cohomology or Deligne-Beilinson cohomology more generally for open varieties, why is it expressible in this fashion that, I have some sheaves in the Zariski topology. You have to do some work to do that. But that was done by Beilinson. So Bloch explains how Beilinson's work, generalizing the original work of Deligne, implies that you can rewrite Deligne-Beilinson cohomology as the cohomology of something hooked up purely in the Zariski topology. Typical type of thing would be, you use the fact that Deligne-Beilinson cohomology is a Bloch-August theory. You write down the corresponding Gersten type complexes. Yeah. that would be one thing. Well, there you might get around it by saying you take cohomology with supports. So here also you want some theory of supports. But in the Bloch-August theory, if I remember, I don't remember all the points, but you need strong purity statements. Much weaker purity is sufficient for this. It's a technical, yeah?
These axioms also serve so that the Chern characters that land in motivic cohomology composed with these maps are the Chern characters.
That must follow by, it must follow by nonsense. I can't say I checked it, but I would imagine it follows from the machine. Because that's true for usual cycles. And the theory is taking the usual cycle class map on other spaces and using various functorial properties and doing algebra. So since that's true for usual cycles, it ought to be true for higher cycles automatically. Okay, so it's not a very, I mean, it's not an unreasonable statement. But I claim this actually has very nice consequences. That's what I wanted to point out. So try and explain that. So remember, among the things which I called pathological, the properties involve things like torsion, cotorsion, things not exactly matching up integrally, and so on. So somehow the point is, in this theory, those torsion and cotorsion phenomena are much better under control. Anyway, I'll come back later to what is involved in the proof of that, maybe not bother to explain. If people ask, I will say something. Let me give you a proposition which follows from this. Let K be a separably closed field. Thanks. Now I'm not to the complex numbers necessarily, but you're free to stick to K equals C because that's where the interesting applications are made. Let X be a smooth projective, let me say. Right. L a prime not equal to the characteristic. Then I claim the following things hold. Let's take one of these L motivic cohomology groups, modified motivic cohomology groups, and look at the L primary torsion. I claim that this is in fact isomorphic to Hm minus 1 et al. Of X QL mod ZL of N. If M is less than or equal to 2n. So this includes the Chow groups, the modified Chow groups. I'm saying that whatever the torsion is, it's governed completely by topology, essentially. But provided I put the L here instead of the usual motive. And secondly, that HML X Zn tensor QL mod ZL equals 0 for M less than or equal to 2n minus 1. Take the L motivic cohomologies, but which are generally higher ones, not the ones corresponding to the Chow groups. Tensor QL mod ZL, they're always 0, they're always divisible. So this is like saying, for example, the L Griffiths group, well, okay, that comes a little later. So I claim these two things are true. Let's understand why. Now, obviously, at least as far as the torsion is concerned, clearly an improvement on the usual Chow groups. This I'll try to sketch something about the argument because there's an important big input which goes into it, and it's a nice application of that machine. So the idea is to look at the following obvious commutative diagrams you can write down. I mean, this is a kind of universal coefficient type of sequence. Sorry, I should have maybe used that boundary. I guess I started with this. Let me stick with it. And then I can do the same thing with cohomology. So this general business that there is some cycle class with values in the theory, I can apply it to et al. Cohomology. I can apply it to et al. Cohomology with finite coefficients or L-adic coefficients, and everything is compatible and functorial and so on. Such a diagram will obviously exist. Now, the deep fact, this map is an isomorphism, always. This is not at all obvious. This is a very deep result. This is sometimes called Quillen-Lichtenbaum conjecture, and it's known that this is equivalent to the what's also called the Bloch-Katow conjecture. I mean, maybe the several conjectures of Bloch and Katow, so let me say which one, on relating. Sorry? This is easy? This is easier? All right, fine. Okay. Experts tell me it's even easier than I thought. Great. So maybe less fancy, but relating Milnor K theory of fields and Galois cohomology. Well, I mean, I've written some definition here. I have to know that that has something to do with the cohomology. Anyway. Okay. Okay. So you're saying it's easier than that? Okay. I mean, if you assured me, the experts tell me that it's easier than I these results only imply it, but it's probably easier than this. No? The results do not imply? Well, whatever. So in any case, by whatever thing, the experts have no problem with the idea that this is an isomorphism. I hope everyone accepts that. So I can get some nice things out of it. The second thing is I claim if I take limits over L, then I'll be left with a map if I take the limits, I'll be left with the following type of. Let me just see how I want to think of this. Let me. I want to take the direct limit over L, but then I want to understand what this map would be in the limit. So for that, I claim I can look at the following thing instead. I can look at HM minus 1 L x Qn and look at the induced map to Hm minus 1 at x Ql of n. Right? The behavior of this map certainly has some relation to what will happen here if I take the limit over f. I claim this map is always 0. One reason is that this is the same as the ordinary motivic cohomology because I've got q coefficients. This in turn comes from algebraic cycles, and algebraic cycles, the cohomology classes of algebraic cycles have certain weights. The weights here are going to be incompatible, therefore the map has to be 0. Argument of weights. This one? I think I'll have to take ZL of n and then tensor with Q. Or take Z mod L to the n and then take the limit and then tensor with Q. That doesn't work? Okay. There's a problem with that? No, I'm going to take the limit. That's what I would intend to do. Because I started with these diagrams and tried to take a limit. Whatever is naturally coming from this diagram is what my definition. That's the relevant one for us. And then whatever this argument with weights is, this appears already in the literature. Bloch long ago gave a proof of Reutemann's theorem on torsion zero cycles. So there's an old article of Spencer Bloch where he gave a proof of this, relating it to K2 and Galois cohomology and the like, and using in that business already he has the same, essentially the same argument. So it's known that that argument sort of adapts in other situations and in particular works here. But the original idea is due to Bloch. And of course, if I was dealing with the L theory with some sort of integral model, it's not obvious what its properties are, but with the M theory, that's ordinary cycles. So they have weights in the usual sense. And so this is true. This implies that in our cortex, taking the limit, the map here would also be 0. So what I would finally deduce is that I get a diagram like this. No, this is really what I'm interested in the end. Sorry, this is m minus 1, which m x z o n. Now, this exact sequence is the limit of the top row, and the bottom row I would have this. Because this thing is a finite group, and since this map here is 0, I have an induced map going, I guess, this way. Right, using the fact this is an isomorphism and this is 0, I get an induced map going from there to there. That map is an isomorphism. That's basically what the result is saying. And I can compute the torsion as this. It just follows from the diagram in some nonsense way. Right? Sorry, no. No, what it will say is that there is a map. Yeah? Yes? Yes, I asserted it is 0. Yeah, it is 0, exactly. I asserted it is 0, yes. It's not obvious to start with, but after the machine it follows. And Bloch had similar arguments, as many of you know well in this earlier case. So it's this is a standard argument. You have to just change the indices around and carry it out. Maybe I slightly messed up. So in any case, right. What I claim is, in fact, I'm saying this stupidly. Since this goes to 0, I get an induced map like this. This map is an isomorphism. This is the correct state. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. The first time I'm lecturing with Deline in the audience in the front row. a brain suddenly freezes there and nothing seems to work. All right. Okay, let me give some consequences of this for complex varieties, which I think are interesting. So, now proposition that k equals c, and let's look at our cohomology theory as consider maths HML x Zn mapping to HMX Zn delete. Let me write down some conclusions. HMLX torsion is isomorphic to HMX Zn, the torsion in this group. So now this cycle map here is an isomorphism on torsion. Okay. Further, the co-kernel of HML xZn, HMX Zn delete is torsion free. I will comment again later about this. Chow and L x Hom, which is kernel of Chow and L x to H2n x. Just take the cycle, topological cycle map. Betti cohomology is certainly an example of such a block cohomology theory, as is Deligne-Williamson cohomology. So, you have the usual cycle map for ordinary cycles with values in this theory in the Betti cohomology factors through the Motivik cohomology. That's also not obvious, but it's a fact. This is divisible. So what is this? I can equivalently say the L Griffiths group is divisible, and the examples which we Rosenschoen and I had, in fact extended by Burt, show that for the ordinary Griffiths group this is false. It's not divisible by any prime, but for this modified thing it's always divisible. Third, kernel of the map from Chow and X to Chow and Lx is isomorphic to take the kernel of the Abel-Jacobi map and restrict it to torsion classes. The kernel is exactly this. The co-kernel of Chow and X to H2n, the Betti cohomology, is always torsion free. I.e., the usual Hodge conjecture is equivalent to the integral Hodge conjecture for Chow star L. After all, whatever the usual cycles are, there's a map from the usual cycle group to this Lichtenbaum-Chow group, and the topological cycle map factors through. So I'm saying that saying the usual Hodge conjecture, which is a statement about cycles tensor Q, saying that that's true, is equivalent to saying that without any tensoring, the same, I mean the Hodge cycles are exactly the image of this. Plus all torsion Hodge classes are what I might call L algebraic. If we change the notion of an algebraic cohomology class to something in the image of this, all torsion classes lie in the image. So from this point of view, yes, absolutely means it. And the whole point is not correct if I don't put there. Right, so these are various nice properties of this theory. Because like I commented earlier, the one price you pay is that, of course, it's not so clear how to do computations, but you can try. And one of the points would be that if you want to understand these various phenomena, you can view it as attempting to compare the Zariski hypercohomology and the et al. Hypercohomology and find the difference. So you can imagine various kinds of spectral sequences you might write down and things which might enter into such a comparison, and such things give a way of putting together various phenomena which we've seen earlier, which we viewed as somehow pathological. You can put them into a package where this machine might say something. For example, one of the exact sequences which appeared maybe earlier was something like this, that 0 to Chow 2. This is a version of what we saw earlier. Just writing down such a spectral sequence for comparison produces such a short exact sequence. So this immediately relates failure of the integral Hodge conjecture, which is the difference between the image of this cycle map and that one, to unramified cohomology. Like that, you can find, if you like, explanations or interpretations or whatever of various phenomena which appear in other works. Okay. Now, I understand the reason Steve looked at this originally was because you wanted to understand things for number theory. So it's natural to ask, okay, I've got this other theory. What happens if I look at it in the number theory context? Does it tell me? I mean, what does it tell me? So let me give one statement which we can't prove, which is a bit strange. Just write it down, and maybe I stop after that. Theorem: let E over Q with elliptic curve with Cm and conductor N let P be a prime not dividing 6n such that E has ordinary reduction at P. Let's take Z to be this ring, which is certainly a finitely generated ring over Z. Let X be the self product of this elliptic curve. It's a surface. Script X to spec Z as a smooth proper model, smooth projective model. Certainly, since I assume an elliptic curve had good reduction, indeed such a model exists. Then I claim two things hold. Let's look at Chow 2 of the L of the model and look at its P primary part. No, spec ZS. Yeah. So I claim this thing contains a copy of QP mod ZP, and the same thing holds for the generic fiber. So this is weird from one point of view, that here's a nice scheme, smooth and proper of finite type, smooth and proper over some ring which is of finite type over Z, and in spite of that, these cohomologies which I might have thought of as better than Chow groups for some purposes are producing something which is not finitely generated. So that's bad from that point of view. So that would suggest if you want to really do something with arithmetic with these things, perhaps you should at least be working with something regular and proper over spec Z. If you invert any primes at all, you might land yourself into trouble. So maybe just let me give you a hand-waving heuristic explanation of what might be behind such a phenomenon. The point is I've inverted the prime P where X had good ordinary reduction. Right? That means the model in fact can be extended to a model over a larger base where I include the prime P also. And suppose I think of this script X tilde as this bigger model. So this is our spec Z 106N. That contains the actual model which I took, which is over spec Zs, and basically I removed the prime P to get this one. So with usual Chow groups, the Chow group of a variety to the Chow group of an open set, the map, restriction map would be surjective, because the Chow group is generated by ordinary cycle. I can just take closure. Now since I've changed the definition of Chow group, that's not given to me. I have to understand it. And in fact, there is the possibility of a kind of residue along the extra good reduction fiber. And since it's a good reduction ordinary fiber, I can actually compute something about this residue and show it's non-trivial. That's what's involved. And I shouldn't say I did it. There's an old paper of Wayne Raskin, who's also in the audience, and Adrian Langer, where they studied exactly this setup and looked at the ordinary Chow groups and proved finiteness without the L. And I think you guys found that there was some bad piece in the fiber there, and it didn't contribute to the Chow group. So in fact, we used your computation and showed that it does contribute to this invariant. So it's not the same computation you did, in fact, implied this. Thanks. That's what I wanted to say.